Episode 98, Forging Powerful Connections. Welcome to Be Who You Want to Be, Your Business, Your Life, the podcast for micropreneurs designing your business and your life on your own terms. I'm your host, Candice Rodardi, and today I'm joined by author Kelly Hoey. Kelly is determined to change the way we understand and approach the critical career skill of networking. She's the author of Build Your Dream Network, Forging Powerful Connections in a Hyper-Connected World. It's a Penguin Random House book, y'all. It's a modern practical guide to necessary and frequently misunderstood networking. All right, Kelly, how are you? What you doing? What's your unique story? How'd you get to where you are? How did you get Penguin to publish your book? I want all the details.
Oh my God. As soon as you said, published by Penguin, I still have that awe moment. And their offices, I live in Manhattan, their offices on Broadway in Midtown, you walk in the lobby, it's like triple height ceiling, floor to ceiling, bookshelves, and you walk in and there's, the greats. There's Maya Angelou. And I do think to myself every time I walk in there, I'm like, oh, how did they let me in? How did I fool them? I never had, so my unique story is I never had an ambition to write a book. I went to school, got an undergraduate degree, went and got a graduate degree because in law, I became a lawyer because that's what my family expected me to do. I practiced law for 12 years. I was really seriously on the snorefest of, oh, I'm a lawyer. All right, I can go be a law firm manager. And the unique part of my story, because I think it is something that could happen to anyone, you choose how you show up and you choose how you contribute. And back in, let me think, it's got to be 2009, became a member of a global business network for women, which at that time was called 85 Broads. And it was a spinoff of an event that had been held as an impromptu alumni gathering for women who used to work at Goldman Sachs. And Goldman Sachs headquarters at the time of this original party was 85 Broad Street. So when an event, I'm going to say a network came out of an event that had kind of this tongue-in-cheek name because of this original party and who was originally invited. And I became a member of that network to learn what they were doing, because at that time I was in a job there where I was building an alumni program for a global law firm. And I think for your listeners, as I said, what's unique about my story is, and what changed everything for me was not just becoming a member of that network, but taking advantage proactively of every single membership tool. If they said have a full profile online, I had a full profile online. If they said, if you're a member, you can blog online, I blogged online. If they said, if you're a member, you can sign up and volunteer for one of our chapters, I signed up and did that because I was doing his research to understand the network. But what it did and what happened was, I think it was like 6 or 9 months after joining, it was not that long. The founder of the network called me at work and she said, I want to know about you. Who are you and what do you do? And I had, first of all, she used to work at Goldman Sachs and was a trader. So it was actually kind of a scary phone call when someone like that when a Wall Street trader calls and says, who are you and what do you do? It's usually not in a nice tone of voice. It's really a little bit more sort of a sharp bark. Anyway, I explained to Janet who I was, what I was doing in my, paid work, what interests me in 85 Broads. We talked community dynamics and building these communities and how you understand them. And at the end of an hour-long phone call, she offered me a job that previously never existed. And she invited me to become the first president of 85 Broads, which at that time was a global network of 35,000 women. And it was, life-changing for me because here was someone who saw a bigger place for my skills and abilities than I had ever imagined. It also was a change, like complete life changer for me, because in accepting the position, I had to step out of being an employee, and I needed to step into considering myself an entrepreneur with skills and talents others wanted to buy, because I left a job and a paycheck to accepting a role that compensated me with equity. And it was, if I look back and think, if I hadn't done that, well, chances are I'd still be in a really kind of boring management job, and you would not want me on the podcast.
I love how stories evolve. So I have two things there. First of all, when you went to college and university, I mean, you probably went to school for 12 years or 8 years. It's because you're an attorney, right? How many years were you in school?
7 in total.
7. Okay. So in those 7 years at university, did you ever take a class on how to network?
No, but my networking idea and how I started thinking about networking differently started when I was an attorney and right out of law school. Because I quickly realized, and I think your audience of entrepreneurs and business owners will understand this. When I started practicing law, I quickly realized there was a fundamental tension in my ability to succeed as a lawyer. And on the one hand, I needed to do the work. I needed to become an expert in my field. I needed to bill clients, which meant I needed to be chained to my desk for all hours. But to be successful, you also had to build relationships. If you were doing one and not the other, like, okay, that's great. You're glad handling clients, but if you don't know what you're talking about, no one's going to hire you, and you get rewarded in advance because you're building hours. But if you're just building hours and not building relationships, then you're handicapping your success as well. And so I really sat back and thought, how can I look at networking differently so I can build relationships and do the work at the same time?
Well, and I don't know about you, but when I started my career in corporate America, I worked twice as hard as the men, and I found out that the men were making more money than I was, even though I worked twice as hard as they did and had better results. That was in the 90s. So, things have changed just a smidge, maybe, I hope. I don't know.
Like I said, my career started in the 90s. And I think the boring thing for both of us at this point in our lives is that women are still having to have the same conversations.
Oh, that sucks. I just created my own, I just said, screw it. I don't want to work for corporate America anymore. In like 98 or something like that, I quit my job and I haven't looked back, right? I haven't looked back. I've been sitting in front of my own computer in my own house with my child growing up for all this time. Okay, so the second point I wanted to make was taking advantage of everything your network has to offer. So I belong to Business Network International, BNI. And, we have the same thing where you can have an online profile and you put your picture and, it's not blogging, but you can talk about story. You can put stuff that, like, you can fill out your profile. Well, one of my clients is in Maryland. She lives near Washington, D.C., and she needed an attorney to help her create her 501c. Right. And so I said, oh, that should be easy. I'll just get on the BNI Connect profile and find an attorney in the Washington, D.C. area who can help her create her 501c.
Yeah.
How many of those attorneys in the Washington, D.C. area on BNI Connect actually had their profile filled out? So I felt confident referring them? None. I reached out to an attorney who did family planning. And I said, I realize that this isn't in your wheelhouse, but you have the best BNI Connect profile in the area. And I have a client who needs ... And she goes, oh, I can do that for her. And I was like, okay, well, there. And they, I connected them and it had great results. But seriously, how many of those attorneys missed out on an opportunity for a new client because they didn't have their profile filled out? I'm talking to anybody in a networking, doesn't have to be in a BNI, any network where you have the ability to have a complete profile so that people get to know you, including your face. Put your picture up there. Why aren't you doing it? Right?
Exactly. Right. I like to say to people, you're networking when you're sleeping because A, the internet, and B, people talking about you. So if you've done great service, you've got a great product, people are talking about it, you're not doing anything, they're talking about it. So you're networking when you're sleeping. People, this is where, part of your networking toolkit, as I need to think of it, particularly for business owners, is good SEO. Because Someone's looking up your product or service, what are they finding when they jump into Dr. Google and start searching away? Like if you're not being found that way, you're missing out on opportunities. And you got to think of that as part of your networking toolkit at this point.
Well, and the other point is if they're finding you in a way that you don't necessarily like, okay, so my husband and I own a custom furniture business. We've done it since I'm not in control of Pinterest. I don't like Pinterest. Pinterest is not my favorite platform. However, it is the number one place where inbound links come to our website. That is how they find our products because other people pin them and then they come to us that way. So I have to make sure that our presence on Pinterest is good, even though I hate Pinterest.
Right. Well, and but you're also making a really, like for business owners, you're making a really good point. It's like, where's your customer? What are they doing? And also understanding what Pinterest is. I mean, the three big search engines, in terms of thinking about your business and how you're networking yourself out to the world, the three big search engines, Google, YouTube, Pinterest. You just heard what I said, search engines. People are thinking, no, YouTube's videos, Kelly. Pinterest is, no, they are search engines. And if you're like your customer, your client is searching visually, whether you like it or not, I mean, that's the networking room you should be in. And I hear you loud and clear on this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. You're really missing out if you're a podcast host and your podcast isn't on YouTube, you're missing a huge audience.
Mm-hmm.
Huge. Right. And even in the furniture business, we have a YouTube channel,
Exactly.
You never know. You never know. All right. I'm really intrigued by this whole thing about your book. You wrote it in 4.5 freaking months.
Yeah.
What the heck? Overachiever, like from scratch.
Oh my God. I heard a better story recently, and I can tell you about that one. But so this is, I think, when, having a variety of experiences in life, you sort of realize that you carry those skills and things into your other endeavors. Like we can both applaud and do high fives and, cheer that we're not still, working in JOBs and not, in a corporate going to, having to put on the pantyhose and, grab the briefcase and go to an office. But the client-driven deadline.
Hold on a minute. What are pantyhose?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Excuse me. Sorry, client-driven deadline.
Yeah, exactly. But yes, back in the day. Anyway, so when the publisher gave me the deadline, a lot of my author friends were like, "You can't get a manuscript. You've never written a book. You can't write a manuscript in 4.5 months." Blah 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 blah. And I took off my aspiring author, writer hat at that moment when the publisher gave me the deadline, and I put on my attorney hat again and went back into that mindset. My clients used to give me some ridiculous deadlines in terms of when transactions were going to close. I was a corporate attorney doing multi-billion-dollar deals. It was like, I couldn't say to them, "Oh, I can't do that." It was like, I don't know how this deal is going to close, but it is going to close on this day because the client has said so. So I just put that hat back on and said, I don't know how I'm going to write a book in 4.5 months, but it is going to get done because the client has given me a deadline.
So when my husband and I started our business, I took a couple of accounting classes and a business law class just so I knew what I was doing. Just basic foundational stuff, right? And let me tell you, reading those briefs, those attorney briefs, they were long and boring, but they were well written, and they were written in 3 days? So attorneys can pump out some content.
Yeah. Well, as soon as you said boring, it's so funny. A friend of mine who has trouble sleeping, one of the ways she goes to sleep is that she goes into a clubhouse room that is attorneys answering questions, like intellectual property questions for people in the entertainment space. And she says it's interesting enough that I'm not going to be like, like, oh my God, this is drivel. Like my brain's not going to get excited about it that way. She says it's interesting enough that I want to listen to it. And it's attorneys, and they pontificate for a long time, very monotone, and it puts her to sleep.
I haven't tried Clubhouse yet. It's probably in my wheelhouse because I love audiobooks and I love podcasts and I like to listen. I mean, I can't remember the last time I actually opened a book and read it. I listen to books. I listen to a lot of books, and a lot of podcasts. I'm constantly absorbing audio content. So maybe Clubhouse would be something that I don't know. Is it one more? It's one more thing though. It's one more.
I know one more. Yeah, well, exactly it. I think if you've got to find the right room and the right purpose for it. And, for this friend of mine, finding this room so she could fall asleep, but somebody else might listen to that Clubhouse room to actually get the information.
What's fascinating about listening to audiobooks and listening to audio in general is that I will listen to some sort of audio if I need a nap, I'll put on an audiobook and I'll take a nap, right? But if I'm driving, I'll also listen to an audiobook to keep me awake.
Yes.
Two different kinds of listening and two different kinds of audio. All right. Okay. We've already gone down rabbit holes. So let's get back to networking, because you believe that networking needs a rebranding. And I personally love networking. When I moved to Michigan in 2017, before we'd even found a house, I'd already joined a networking group because I knew that was the best way to get established in my new town. So what's wrong with networking? How are we going to fix it?
So I want to say you're unique. You actually thought, I've moved somewhere. I need to meet other people. I want to be part of this community.
Oh, lady, you don't even know the half of how unique I am.
Yeah. This is why I love you so much, and love your podcast, and was thrilled that when I pitched you said, come and be a guest. So a lot of people look at networking as, a necessary evil. They look at it as something that, oh my God, you do this when you need something, like I need a job, whatever. And then they drop it like a hot potato. And rather than thinking about this is something that adds value to our lives, not just, a fast track to a job or a client, they don't realize that actually how you show up every day and think about how you can be of service to other people is far more important than how you show up once with the perfect pitch or the perfect elevator pitch or the perfect, whatever. We remember how people make us feel. And that may come more from, a bunch of Facebook posts or sending a birthday card or having been that really great colleague than, as I said, sweeping in and thinking that working the room is going to get you what you need. And so that's why I say that it needs a rebrand. I think it also needs a rebrand. There are definitely situations, and you hit on one, a move to a new city, where you're like, I need to expand my network. But we all have networks. We bring networks with us, and people forget to be of service and to tap into the people they already know. And that's, when I often say to people when they're thinking, oh, I've got to get out and network, and I'm like, pause, stop for a moment. What is it you're trying to achieve? Now, have you thought about who in your network can already help you? Because that's where you got to start, rather than thinking, like the knight in shining armor is going to come in and rescue us. There's not like the equivalent on the networking sphere, like some stranger is not going to magically, drop VC money on you or, necessarily be your next customer, but someone you already know may be that linchpin introduction to that next thing. So that's why I sort of say it needs that rebrand, and rebrand in the sense of what are the activities that we should consider part of our networking arsenal, our networking toolkit. So for business owners, I think your voicemail, I think the recording if your customers call your service desk, your invoice, how every single employee of yours holds themselves out on social media. That's all part of your networking toolkit, not just, am I a member of a business networking group and, going to their mixers and, handing out my business cards.
Many, many years ago, I worked for the North Face. I was an inside sales rep. And one of my clients was a store, an independently owned store called Moose Jaw Mountaineering. Well, Moose Jaw was purchased by Walmart. I don't know, probably 15 years ago. And in my current network is a snowboard manufacturer. So the snowboard manufacturer belongs to my networking group. And he sells to Moose Jaw Mountaineering. And I was like, when they first started out, it was such a great vibe. I actually loved working. I loved working with them. I loved talking to them. It was just so, they were such a great group of people. I hope Walmart didn't ruin that. And he was like, no, they kept their culture. Their culture is still fantastic. They're still a great company to work with. And I was like, oh, good. Oh, good. Because culture really does make a huge difference. It really does. And if you're, I mean, I knew nothing about the outdoor industry. I was offered two jobs. One of them was selling screws and nuts and bolts for a screw and nuts and bolt manufacturer, and the other was working for the North Face. And I knew nothing about the North Face. I knew nothing about them, but the vibe that I got when I got there was like, wow, I really love how I feel when I'm in this building.
And I bet when you loved selling to Moose Jaw Mountaineering, and only because there is a place in Canada, Moose Jaw, and I just like to say the word a lot. We're just going to keep mentioning Moose Jaw Mountaineering.
Okay, that's fine.
So I bet when you were selling into Moose Jaw Mountaineering, you made some great relationships with people who work there. I bet if you found out that they still work there and you reached out, my guess is they would respond, regardless of the lapse of time. And that's the piece, I think, for people to remember, like, how do you make people feel? How do you show up when you're working together? Because it doesn't matter if it's been 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, someone shows up where you've had that warmth and those feelings. So that's why I sort of say to people, the rethinking of networking is rethink every single touch point you have with other people on a daily basis.
I think the owner and I are still LinkedIn connections. I'm going to have to look him up and just tell him I've been talking about him lately. So what is true about that statement is I worked with a man at the North Face. His name is James Mills. He he's a writer. He writes for like National Geographic and plays an outdoor magazine, and he has this website called the Joy Trip Project. And I recently connected him with someone locally as a referral, a possible business referral. I haven't seen him in 20 years. I haven't connected with him in 20 years, but because I kept up with what he was doing and I knew that he could provide a service for this local person and how outside the box is that connection. He leads adventure, he leads adventure trips for disadvantaged and he's doing all these things that are totally different than he was doing then. How in the world did I find a connection for him? It's because I was paying attention.
Bingo. And he was keeping his network updated. So
exactly.
So like his LinkedIn profile is updated. So I think, this is a beautiful example of the things like I talk about in my book, is the idea of how do you treat people and how do you engage with them, right? So that when your name comes up, when they think of you, it's got this positive aura to it. Secondly, how are you keeping them informed? That doesn't mean you have to send them a detailed Christmas card with the insert letter that tells everything you did, how you breathed and farted for the entire year. You do not need to do that. You're posting, you're sharing things, and then it behooves you to pay attention to what other people are doing. And then when you see this beautiful interaction, just be able to say, hold it, someone in my other network is saying this guy's doing this. Maybe they'd be a good, connection. That is just like such a prime, gorgeous example.
So maybe instead of calling it networking, we should call it connecting.
Or we should just call it being a decent human being, not being
a jerk. I like that. Being a decent human. That's one of the proudest moments of my life was when my daughter wore "I'm a decent human" t-shirt.
That's
like, awesome. Yes, I did something right. Because you always wonder if you're doing a good job as a parent, because you don't get positive feedback as a parent.
Not for a while yet. Unfortunately, I think for parents, it's when they're on the other side and there's some eulogy and you're like, great, now you tell me I was a good parent. But yes, anyway.
So I think that what we've basically been talking about with making great connections is generosity. So let's dig into that. So generosity is a key to networking. Let's dig into that some more.
Yeah, and I think it's a troublesome one for a couple of reasons. One is technology, and that is that we think because we like, connect, friend, I say in air quotes, that we can, jump ahead on the generosity. Like, oh, gee, I'm connected to Candace now, I can ask her for this. It's like, hold on, right? just because we follow each other, I'm just going to say this to make you laugh. Just because you follow me on Pinterest doesn't mean you get to ask me for all these things, right? So there's that element of technology where we've because it has opened up a wider horizon for us to make connections, and it literally opens more doors. We think we have like a fast track kind of people mover escalator to get in there, and I'm like, hold on. The human rules of networking still apply, and generosity is one of those. The other troublesome thing I think for generosity is, people say you need to give before you get. And a lot of times when we are connecting with other people, we're doing it because we have a need. Maybe we have a question that needs to be answered. Maybe we have some information we're seeking and we know this other person has it. So we're feeling that we're in a deficit and we wonder what we have to give. And old networking rules would sort of say like, okay, if someone gives you X, you have to give them X. And we think the transaction has to be like equal. You make an introduction, I need to make an introduction for you. And I'm like, time out. Networking generosity in this day and age, as I see it, is first of all, do your homework before you reach out. You can find a lot of information. It would be really stupid to, email you and say, hey, do you have a podcast? Because if you have a podcast, I'd like to be on it. It's like, hold on. If you actually, got on Google and did a search, you'd find out you had this fabulous podcast. If someone reached out and said, hey, so you have a podcast, I'd like to be on it. It's like, okay, a generous thing would be to say, hey, see, you have a podcast. I see this is what it's about. I listened to these episodes, and here's where I think my unique approach, knowledge, skill set, information will add value to your audience, and it doesn't seem to be that it's been addressed, right? That's networking generosity. It is doing that homework. It is spending that time. It is showing the other person that you respect their time, their reputation, maybe their network if you're asking for an introduction. And if it is something where someone else is referring you to other people, this is where your networking generosity is to follow up and to keep them in the loop on what happened. None of what I have just explained requires you to do the same for the other person, right? Maybe sometime down the road, right? Something will come to me that I'll be like, you know who you need to talk to? Oh, you've got a podcast on starting a business with a spouse. You know who you should talk to? No, my buddy here has been doing this since 1998, with her husband. You should talk to her, right? Oh, I want to talk to someone who's got a business where they reluctantly have to use Pinterest. I'm like, I got your gal, so there may be something, but having to force it in the moment, and I'm stressing that because I think for many people, the idea, they get the networking generosity piece, but it is also what holds them back from making the outreach they need because they think it has to be identical. It has to mirror what they're asking for. And I'm like, no. Let's rethink this, because a lot of us mentor and give help because we want to do that. And we are not asking in return for what we are giving you, but this is what we do want.
So that's the law. We're talking about the law of reciprocity, that which is given is returned. But here's the thing. Just because if I gave Kelly something, a referral or whatever, well, she's already given me great content for my podcast, right? Great content that I can use across all of my platforms. So she's already given me something. I don't necessarily have to give her something equal back. What happens is that Kelly's going to receive something of equal value back in her own life because she gave to me. So that's the law of reciprocity. It's not a I did this for you, so you have to do this for me thing. It's a I did this for you, and I'm going to receive something back from someone else. So I don't share this story very often because it makes me come off as, I don't know, snarky, but it's not. Okay. So I was a Girl Scout leader.
I like snark. So go snark, baby.
So I was a Girl Scout leader for 10 years. I did some really remarkable things. Like, I'm going to tell this story, this 10-year story in 2 minutes, right? So when the service unit, the ladies who ran the whole program in the city that we lived in fell apart, I asked permission from the council if I could throw a wine and cheese party for the leaders of the chapter, of the leaders of the service unit. And they gave me permission to serve wine and cheese, right? And I brought them all in, spoiled them rotten, and then said, okay, here's the situation. We don't have a leadership team. And because of the wine and cheese party, leader stepped in and I didn't have to do anything. I had done my job, and, but I kept doing things like that. I kept showing up for things. My troop actually ran these district or service or council-wide events year after year, right? We started an end of year party. My troop did, and it got picked up by other people. And so 10 years in, I'm about to leave, and I'd never been given the award for leader of the year. I've never been outstanding. I never received the outstanding leader award, and I was about to leave. So I just assumed that at the end of year party, I was going to get the award for outstanding leader. They gave it to a brand new leader that year. And then I left Girl Scouts and I was done. My daughter was no longer a Girl Scout, so I was no longer involved. So I didn't get the award. However, I gave all that away for 10 years. And then when I was diagnosed with cancer, my network showed up in such a huge way. Our family didn't have to worry about food. There was somebody there with me holding my hand when I had to have, all these procedures done with me. My network showed up so big for me. And it was from some of them were from the Girl Scout network. Some of them were from other networks, but I received back 100-fold what I gave to the Girl Scouts. I didn't need the award because I got back more than I gave. That is the law of reciprocity. And right. I don't know, I felt compelled to share that right now.
Your Girl Scout example is an absolutely beautiful example of networking generosity. We can hope to have an outcome, and we can actually, kind of miss the bigger picture of what can be. And while a plaque on the wall is lovely, the pat on the back acknowledging service, think about the bigger thing you got out of that. You have got people who've showed up for you years later. You've got people who hold your hand through chemotherapy. You've got, I just think it's a gorgeous example. And so thank you for, sharing that with me and sharing that with everybody else and just being so personal on that.
Well, I hope that it makes the point that the person that you're giving to doesn't have to give back. I hope people got that. Are you listening, audience? I hope you got that.
Or they don't have to, or they don't, how they give back. Like, you control the effort when you're like connecting with other people. You can't control the outcome.
Exactly.
And the outcome may be something you're not expecting.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Nobody plans to get cancer. No.
Or to lose in a leadership team and have to recruit one at the last minute, right?
Exactly. Nobody plans for that.
No. But you sort of think to your life, if you think in life, gee, things may happen to me, I need a safety net. As I like to say to people, your plan A in life is like execute the heck out of whatever your venture or your goal is. Your plan B in life is having a network so that if plan A doesn't work out. So your plan A in life is to have great health. Your plan B is, if I don't have good health, do I have a community that's going to support me through that challenge?
Yeah. And it's pretty remarkable when you do. Okay. So, all that happened before the pandemic, years before the pandemic. And, I learned it from my mom. My mom always, my mother would send hundreds of Christmas cards every year. She just had this, and all over the world. They traveled and they met friends everywhere they went. My mom met friends everywhere she went. My dad was along for the ride, right? So I learned how to network by watching my mom. But that was when you could meet in person. Well, even though most places allow you to still meet in person, it's not still quite safe. I don't do it very often. I still network online, but talk about for those folks out there who say, I can't network right now, it's too difficult. Everything is on hold right now. What advice do you have for them?
That's where we go back to in some ways, where this conversation started earlier. You are networking. If someone's not finding your product or service online, if you have, like those lawyers with the incomplete profiles, so you can't decide whether or not you can refer any work to them, how you're making your existing customers feel, that's all part of your networking. And this is why I think, my book has been out for a couple of years now, and even before that, this is, what I was talking about and saying to people, and why I look at networking differently. Networking is our every single touch point we have with other people. So, your holiday card list that you've already touched upon, your social media profiles, how you take and schedule calls with customers, how you follow up with customers. That's all part of your networking. That networking the room, that whether it's a schmoozy lunch or a mixer with the business community, that's a tiny slice of all the networking that's available to us. So for people who say I can't do networking right now, I'm like, are you living under a rock? Are you in a coma? Like, what's the deal? Because you are networking.
I feel like I network more now than I did before. Because
Pinterest.
Yeah. My network has grown. So I literally added 4, possibly 500 people to my database since 2017, since I moved to Michigan.
Yeah.
Because I was on purpose about meeting new people. Now, do I know them all really well? No. But has every single one of those person received a nice to meet you greeting card in the mail? Yes.
You're also hitting on something. So I think we talked so much about networking. So we're talking about the verb, the activity, but there's this piece, the noun. What is your network? And one of the things that has happened as a result of the pandemic is there's a chunk of our network that has shrunk, and that is the acquaintance level network. And so I think when people say they miss networking, there's a real piece of that in the sense of understanding who and what we're missing. And I don't think people have realized the value they have placed on incidental, casual interactions. Maybe it is the bus driver used to always see because that was their regular route that you took to work, or the barista at a Starbucks, or the security guard at a building, or the 5 people that you knew always showed up to the second Tuesday of the month mixer at your business community. And you didn't know who else would show up, but you knew those 5 people would be there. And you didn't know much else about them, but you saw them at that. That network, that acquaintance casual network has shrunk because it's a network that's based on activity. And I think it's one that, traditionally we undervalued, because it's kind of a small talk network. And what you need to realize is those networks add huge value and dimension to our lives, and huge possibility, when we engage and listen to them. We don't just treat them as, oh, well, it's nothing because I don't see them all that much and yeah, whatever, So I think that's what's the thing people have to pay attention to when they say they aren't networking. We'll call BS on that. You are. And the second piece is when you say there isn't much you can do, I think you need to analyze, what piece of this thing, you're feeling a lapse or a lack of energy for.
I think people miss the point that a barista or a doorman are probably 2 of the most connected people on the planet. I mean, I guarantee you that if you told your barista that you wanted to be introduced to an insurance agent, that barista would be able to connect you because they talk to everybody if they're good.
Well, I think it's one of those things on networking. People forget that your network has networks. And just because, and we're in that old mindset on networking, which you absolutely get, the idea that so many people think that networking is only of value when you're doing it like up the food chain, like somebody who's the honcho. Whereas you never know where your opportunity is going to come from. It might come from an intern. It might come from the barista. In the case of a friend of mine, the linchpin introduction was his personal trainer. And it happened because he truly leaned into a conversation that started off in the usual superficial way. Hey, what's going on at work? How's work going? You could just turn to your personal trainer, your hairdresser, or the barista, the security guard, and you bus driver, and you could go, oh, it's fine. How are you doing? Right? Like that non-listening, superficial, flip it off, right? Instead, my friend explained what he was doing at work. And the personal trainer stopped and said, I think I have another client who could help you. And it was linchpin introduction.
See, that's more about listening than talking.
Which I think is the power of your biggest power when you are networking is listening.
So a question that I get asked a lot by clients or people who want to know more about how I do what I do is, how do you convert them into clients? And my answer is always, well, I have conversations with them and I ask them a lot of questions. Well, how does that convert them to a client? They start to like me. And once they like me, they want to know more about what I do. And they ask me questions. And then they become clients.
And by listening, like someone listening to your podcast before pitching you, they listen to hear what you need so that they can say, hey, here's what you do, here's what I do. I think actually there's a synergy here. And I think that's how does it turn them into client? You listen and find out that there's a need. Maybe you don't convert someone because you're like, well, this is great, but they don't need me. Right.
Well, and Jenny Bellinger, who I interviewed a couple episodes ago, I'll get the show in the show notes. Will be a link to the interview with Jenny. She talked about how she has 100% close rate, but she's not always closing for her products and services. She's closing for somebody else. So if Kelly needed to be connected to another podcast host and wanted to be on another podcast host and wanted to share her message on another podcast, well, I could connect her with several podcast hosts because they're in my network. Am I closing her from, is that a close? Yes. Is that a close for me? No, but it's a close. So you also have to think about that you aren't always, that everything you do isn't always about you.
Right.
And that's networking too. That's
exactly.
Networking too.
Exactly. But I think, oftentimes when we think about, sort of the old thought about networking, people are like, what am I going to say? What's my pitch? How am I going to do this? And it's like, how are you going to listen?
Yeah.
Because if you listen, that's where you're going to find things to talk about. So you don't need an icebreaker question if you know how to listen. How are you going to listen and get business? Or how are you going to network and get business? You're going to listen. One, I'm going to say one of the super fans of my book who found it, literally discovered my book in the past year. And so all she's been doing is like networking online. And what she said, how do I get clients after one online Zoom event? She said, I paid attention. I took notes. I watched and observed what other people were asking for. I didn't put in the Zoom chat, hey, everyone, let's connect on LinkedIn, right? She paid attention to the people she wanted to connect with after the Zoom event. She went and researched them online. Then she went and reached out. And the people that she reached out to, 2, 3, 4 people, boom, landed them as clients.
That is perfect. It's perfect. And anytime I go to a new networking event, like a speed networking kind of thing, I always get a bunch of LinkedIn requests after that, and which is fine, whatever. But the ones that are accompanied by a message that says, hey, I just met you in speed networking. I really enjoyed talking to you about XXX or XYZ. So we don't talk about XXX in networking events, or at least not that kind of networking event. XYZ. I'd love to connect here on LinkedIn. Let's have a one-to-one or whatever. Those are the ones that I really pay attention to and that turn into something better.
Well, it's that little personal note, right? And your busy brain could go, oh, right, I did meet this person. Oh, they refreshed my brain on what it was. The ones where people just use the standard message. I mean, as I say, someone says, what do you do with those ones? I said, it's really simple. When I get an outreach that's, hey, I'd like to connect with you on LinkedIn, and I don't know the person, I just hit delete. Because I'm like, my brain does not need to figure out why we should be connected. Tell me why we should be connected. Do the research, do the work. Let me know why we should be connected. And listen to what my needs are, not some generic, I'm going to reach out to every author on LinkedIn and, send them this message. Tell me why me,
So while we're on the subject of LinkedIn, we need to wrap up, because even though I could talk to you for like the next 7 hours, we do need to wrap up. But before we get to my final question, my second to last question is, I just followed you on LinkedIn, and it said follow, not connect. So how'd you set that up? This is a good tip.
Oh, I think, go into your settings. Oh no, because I think there is a way to make it so that people can find a way to like connect, but then again, to connect with me, you have to have an email address, and it's not the email address you think. So, but I'm going to make sure that we're connected. But I think if you go into the settings, you can have that so people follow you.
Oh, the answer is she turned on content creation. So in LinkedIn, if you want to let people follow you without being your friend or your connection, like you're a public figure, like Kelly's an author. So of course she wants people to be able to follow her. She just doesn't want them to spam her with their stuff, right? So she's turned on content creator in LinkedIn, which is a relatively... Go ahead.
They may have done that. They may have done that for me because I've been on LinkedIn since like 2009. So all I've got in terms of settings so I don't get the spam, because you probably like me get the people wanting to sell you fax machines kind of spam. Yeah. And so I have it so people have to use my email address. So between, I guess, the content, LinkedIn with the content creator, and then this requirement of having an email address to connect with me, it really just defaults to having to follow.
Oh, well, see, there's something I didn't know, that you could set it up so that they have to know your email address. I love that. Excellent. All right. You probably get ridiculous amounts of spam. It really reduces the spam. And I think particularly for women on these platforms, anything we can do to kind of put some hurdles up for the crap is worth it. I wish that I could do that on Instagram, because I swear to God, if one more handsome general who's just about to retire and is a widow with a cute dog follows me on Instagram, I'm just going to stop being on Instagram, because I can't handle all these handsome generals. What I really want to know is, what do they think they're going to get from me? Do I look naive? Yeah. Do I look naive? Do you think you're going to be able to scam me out of something?
Where is the dark web discussion group that says, hey, if you want to con women, pretend you're a handsome general and put a Pekingese under your elbow? Yeah.
Really? I actually have a good friend he's a successful man. He's kind of attractive. He's a successful, handsome man who looks reputable, and his pictures have been stolen and have been passed around the dark web, and fake profiles saying of him with different names show up all the time. He's constantly having to have them taken down. They have stolen his pictures, and they're trying to pass themselves off as him, but they're not using his name. They're using some other name. But yeah, it's just such crap bullshit. Oh. That's another reason why you need to have a good network, so that when people find that, they can say, hey, somebody's using your photo again, dude.
Yeah, exactly. You're being passed off as a general looking for a date. Okay.
Yeah. All right. I wish I could talk to you forever, but I can't. So share with me something you're grateful for. This is your moment of gratitude. What are you grateful for?
I am really grateful for podcast platforms looking for guests that connected us. I am really grateful for that. I am really grateful for someone like you who spends so much time putting in thought into these kind of interviews and putting out this wonderful content to help a community and to be part of that. I am truly grateful for that. So thank you. Thank you for having me on this podcast. Thank you for what you do, because I know these podcasts, having hosted one, I know they are in some ways a massive labor of love. Thank you for your generosity. I am beyond grateful for this.
Thank you for adding value to the world. And you're welcome. All right. Thanks for joining us this week on Be Who You Want to Be, Your Business, Your Life, episode 98. Holy crap. 2 more episodes to 100. Be sure to check the show notes at momgeek.com/98 for links to the resources mentioned today. And of course, to connect with Kelly Hoey. Be sure to follow us on iTunes, Stitcher, Audible, or wherever you listen to podcasts, so you never miss an episode. Hey, listen up. You and I both know that you are dazzling, you're spectacular, and you possess magical gifts like no one else in the world. Micro-influencer magic was created just for you. Book your discovery call with me to learn how micro-influencer magic will help you cast your spell. Look for the link in the show notes, momgeek.com/98. Our theme music is Never Give Up, written and performed by Soul Lily. I've been your host, Candace Rodarty, and yes, you can be who you want to be.
Feel your spirit, let it soar. Fly away and be free. Take less, always give a little more now. Be what you want to be. Never give up on dreams. Never give up on dreams. Never give up, never give up, never give up on dreams.